Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. It is, as somebody has just put in the chat, it is the real Super Sunday is upon us. Do you remember those back in the day? I mean, it wasn't City back in the day, was it? It was United, Liverpool, and in the men's, I'm talking about here. United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. But in the WSL side of things, it is more than worthy of that title as a Super Sunday. I'm not going to waste any time with any more of an intro because we've got so much to cover. We've got the two games, obviously, to talk about. Everyone knows what they are: the Manchester Derby, the London Derby, all of those kinds of things. So, Emma, I'm going to start with yourself. How are you feeling ahead of Sunday? Confident, nervous? How are you feeling from a City point of view going into this? Because I feel it's probably a must-win for City at this point, being 2 games from the end of the season now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say confident is the word at this moment in time. Hopefully that'll change come Sunday. But yeah, must win now. Last 2 games, but I'm looking really for a response from the disappointment of the loss against Liverpool. Really, we've had a good bit of time in preparation for Sunday, so I'm expecting a real response from the team. Like yourselves, and probably some of the other teams as well. In terms of top 4, every game's looking like a must win now. We're at the business end of the season, and I just want to get the result. Regardless, it's still a derby, regardless of where we are in the league, what impact that has on in terms for us. I still want to go out and win it.
I mean, Barry, from our point of view, obviously we're expecting a little bit of a response, I guess, as well. Obviously from Sunday's defeat, are you confident going into this? Because I mean, by the time we get to the derby, Chelsea might have won by that point, and the title will probably be very, very unlikely by that point. But as Emma said there, it's still a Manchester derby, and we want to go out and win it. So I guess are you confident after obviously last week only the 1 defeat, obviously to Chelsea recently? But are you confident going into this, or are you a little bit nervous? How are you feeling ahead of it?
Well, I just mishear you. Have you basically conceded the title live on air just there?
If Chelsea beat Arsenal, yes.
Well, obviously, if Chelsea beat Arsenal, yeah, it's not looking great. But you never know. You never know. Reading might do them a cropper on the last game of the season. You can never quite tell. It's the magic of football. This is going to be a really tough game. City are not easy, and they are literally on the edge, aren't they, of dropping out, not being in the top 3. So they're going to be fighting for it. Absolutely, they're going to be coming out all guns blazing. But I genuinely think, and I would hope that Rob would back us up with this, the way we've played this season, and indeed the way we played at the weekend, means we really shouldn't hold any fear of any of the teams in the WSL right now. If we play the way we know we can, and the players all do their jobs and do the things they're supposed to do, we should beat Manchester City. We should, because we've been better, provided we can manage to keep Bunny Shaw on a leash and not allow her past the halfway line. We might do okay. But I think really that's the biggest thing we need to worry about. We can do it. It's going to be incredibly tough. But you know me, Captain Optimism, and I shall continue remaining optimistic about it. I think we've got a really good chance. And again, it's the time to take it now. I think they need that response. They didn't manage to get the goals they should have got against Chelsea. Now they've got to go out there and get them against City and prove that we deserve to be in the top 3.
No, yeah, hard to disagree with that one. Nancy, then, from an Arsenal point of view, flicking over to that side, how are you feeling, I guess, just looking at the games as a whole? I guess the 2 games, but also from an Arsenal point of view, obviously we know Volti is now out for the rest of the season as well. Another big loss. I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail a little bit as well. But how are you kind of, I guess, feeling or anything going into this one at Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in both games there's so much to play for, isn't it? I think it's so, as a neutral fan, to get to the penultimate round of fixtures and have like the title race and the Champions League places on the knife edge is what every fan wants. So in that kind of scenario, it's exciting, definitely. As an Arsenal fan, yeah, it's nerve-wracking. I think that both games are such high stakes. just from the Man City, Man U perspective, I'm quite relieved that it's after Chelsea Arsenal, because I think if United did win, that could be quite an energised Chelsea. You know, they know that they need to win, which probably with like our injury, our team is just completely, being pulled apart this season with injury. So I think you'd want to play a Chelsea that has kind of doesn't have that kind of, motivation behind it as much, even though of course they'd be going out to win fully. So yeah, obviously hoping for a United win in that scenario, but after Chelsea Arsenal, that's the dream. In terms of Chelsea Arsenal, I am not very confident just because of the injuries. I think it's interesting when you look at the head-to-head record this season, like it's been pretty evenly matched, and I don't think it's a case of like, Chelsea bulldozing Arsenal every single fixture. I think it's been a draw in the league, a win for Arsenal in the Conti Cup final, and then a loss for Arsenal in the FA Cup. So I think this season it's actually been maybe, very evenly matched. But despite all the kind of resilience and grit that this Arsenal team has shown, as they're literally constantly struck down by injury, I'm not so much worried about the starting 11, but it's kind of like the depth, the players that we're bringing on. Obviously, you've got Jodie Taylor, who's an experienced player, but then you're kind of relying on like 19-year-olds who, while they're really good players, it's kind of maybe not what you want when you're fighting for Champions League against like the defending champions of the league and stuff. So yeah, I'm not that confident. But I think as long as, even if City do beat United and we just get a result at Villa, which again is very tough, it's not the end of the world if we lose. So yeah, it's just a lot going on, a lot of emotions.
It certainly is, and we're going to get to a lot of the points you just raised in a second. Rob, for yourself, I'm sure you're going to say you're pretty confident going in. Not going to lie, you made easier work of West Ham than I thought you were going to. Chelsea, just see it. Interestingly enough, as Nancy said there, Arsenal, Chelsea this season. Arsenal obviously have beaten you, obviously in the Conti Cup, the draw in the league, and the loss in the FA Cup. So you'd think there would be a bit more confidence than, say, a United side. When we played you in the FA Cup recently, we were pretty confident going into it, we could, even though we hadn't beaten you this season already. But I mean, going into the Arsenal game, I'm pretty sure, obviously with it being at home, we know that it's going to be a couple of players' last games as well for Chelsea. There's obviously that factor. Pretty much if you win the league, if you win that game, you've probably won the league because it's Reading on the last game of the season. I'm pretty sure you're going to say you're confident, but how are you feeling? Are you going to completely sort of throw everyone off here and say you've got some nerves ahead of it, or?
Naturally, I do have some nerves because ultimately, I don't think football is played on grass, not on paper, and whatever you have before, this is not as if Chelsea are playing a team that you would expect them to steamroll. We're not playing, say, with all due respect to Leicester this weekend. We are playing a very, very good Arsenal side with an incredibly good tactician in charge. Some incredibly good players that I think maybe when others have been injured, they have stepped up to the plate and shown particularly how good they can be. You maybe haven't seen it as much in recent weeks due to her injury, but I think Caitlin Ford is one of those. I think Frida Mana has definitely done it all season. McCabe playing in an actual sort of, in a more forward and advanced role. And ultimately, they are a side that when they have faced adversity this season, they haven't crumbled. And I think that's the big thing. The real telling factor, I think, for this game, for both sides, is that both of them come into it knowing that a point probably actually doesn't really not suit either of them. And I think Arsenal may be pragmatic, especially if Chelsea were to take the lead at Kingsmeadow on Sunday and to try and keep it tight and then try and push for an equaliser. Because a point effectively guarantees Arsenal Champions League football. A point effectively guarantees Chelsea the title. Because I think with the best will in the world, I think if Chelsea are going into the final day even level on points, but with any goal difference lead, because I'm sorry to say I don't necessarily think you're going to score 4 past Manchester City, to be honest, even if you do win. I think if Chelsea are going into that final day against Reading, I have seen Chelsea on final days against Reading before. I remember the last time they went into a final day against Reading, level on points, they were ahead within 52 seconds. Similar to against West Ham at the on Wednesday, actually. Chelsea were 1-0 up at half-time, and they came out in that second half, and for the first sort of, 120 seconds of it, West Ham didn't touch the ball until the keeper picked the ball out of the net from Harder's shot. Chelsea are just a different beast. And I have said this before to teams, Chelsea, during the run-in, they have a and inert ability. There will always be one game in the running where they struggle, they don't really get going. This year it was Liverpool, last year it was Aston Villa. And once they get that game out the fixture, they just go into a different level. And I think it's helped the fact that they had Pernilla Harder return from injury because, I think at the same time where Sam Kerr, she's not necessarily gone off the boil, that's the wrong word, but where she's needed help, maybe Guro Reiten hasn't been getting as many assists. Lauren James hasn't quite been as dynamic as she was at the start of the season at all times. Being able to bring Pernilla Harder back in is a bit like saying, well, your Ferrari's not working, so here's the Lamborghini courtesy car. And that's the example that I've always, used. I think that Chelsea have, in that regard, have managed it very well. I think the other thing with Chelsea, and I sort of have said that this, I think, has gone under the radar, they've coped remarkably well with the absence of Millie Bright. Like a lot of Chelsea fans, I think, were very, very worried about the absence of Millie Bright in the games, but Magda Eriksson, the Captain Fantastic, has stepped up in the breach. You've seen Jess Carter put in some phenomenal performances. You've seen Mara Mielda roll back the years and show why she is such a good defender and why she's such a phenomenal player. And yeah, to be honest, I think Chelsea will be sort of confident. I think if you offered them, I said that I tweeted this yesterday. If you said to me at half-time in that Liverpool match, it was 1-1, that you'd go into the sort of penultimate game and the final game at Kingsmeadow, level on points with, 2 points ahead with a +4 goal difference, besides suggesting to you that you might require some sort of, intervention, I think I would have taken that. What I will say will be interesting from an Arsenal perspective on Sunday is if Chelsea do get the early goal, will they have a situation a bit like in the Wolfsburg game where they were very, very lucky in the Wolfsburg game to still be in that first leg at the end of half-time. Wolfsburg missed a hatful of chances. Chelsea at the moment are in their more clinical vein of form. And I think, if you're offering those sort of chances up to a Pernilla Harder or, Sam Kerr, Guro Reiten, etc., then, someone talks about the Hall.
I was going to say, I wasn't laughing at you, Rob. I was laughing at that.
People talk about Hall of talent, and yet none of the players seem to complain at game time. And someone says when you lose about Millie Bright and Buchanan, this is the thing, is that Chelsea lost Bright and Buchanan. But the big thing this year, and I think it was shown the other day on the Sky coverage, Chelsea have made 75 changes to starting 11s this year in the WSL. That's, I think, it's almost twice as many as the next most, which I think was Everton. They have used the squad this year, whether people like it or not.
I don't want to see United. That's a conversation. I don't.
I can't remember you being in the top 5. I think it was Chelsea, then Everton, then unsurprisingly Arsenal, and that's mainly due to injuries rather than anything else. And then I want to say Leicester and someone else, I think.
No, you make certainly some good points. I brought this coming up a second ago. 100%. I think if even from a United point of view, if you take Honor, Letitia, Galton, I don't know, Toon, for example, out of our squad, would we have kept that same winning momentum? Maybe not. Who knows? It's if and buts and so on. Emma, throwing it back to a City point of view, then obviously your main strength, I guess, if you want to call it that, and we'll start with that before we look at maybe some other areas. Obviously, your forward line. Obviously, Bunny Shaw is currently going for the Golden Boot, whether she's going to get that or not. Again, 2 behind Daly at the moment, so she could do with a couple of goals or at least one, obviously, on Sunday. But your forward line, this season has been pretty strong in most games. So how much, I guess, have you been impressed, with that forward line, Bunny Shaw in particular, but any other players, I guess, along that front 3-4 that you want to bring up as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's an attacking 3, really, when you look at it. It's a really strong forward line that we've got, and we're very lucky. Last season, obviously, Bunny, she needed that season or so to settle in, to bed in, obviously, different culture, different environment. And obviously she was sharing that striker partnership with Ellen White. So it's good to see that, she's come to the forefront of that now. She's had to wait, she's had to be a bit patient, and that's paying dividends now for her. She will be shortlisted as one of the players of the season, and rightly so. I think, she's had a really good return, not just in the goals that she scored, but in the assists as well that she's provided for teammates around her. So, I've been really impressed with Bunny. And, yeah, Chloe and Hempo supporting that as well. I think they've been outstanding at times. You know, we've been really creative. I just think we should have probably had more return, really. If I've got any frustration, is that, you know, we've had some moments in some big games where, you know, we should be seeing games off and getting results, and that's been our downfall a little bit this season, I think. But we just need to carry that forward now, I think, into next season, because there's certainly a lot of positives when you look at that now, and I think we know that we've got a core group of players that essentially we need to build around and strengthen, you know, when we look at the summer, and essentially the income is in that window. So yeah, it's hard, and it will be hard for United to defend against, but United have been outstanding this season. You know, when you look at last season and the progression that they've made, I think it's going to be difficult for us, but we've got to be on top of our game on Sunday. If we want to get something out of that game, then, you know, we're going to have to be at our best.
Someone, before I just throw it over to Barry again, back from a United point of view, obviously Sporty's mentioned somebody we were going to mention anyway, Hasegawa. I mean, talk to us about her kind of influence, I guess, this season, because I think it kind of goes under the radar, not somebody that you see, I guess, spoken about, or either whether that be on Twitter, on BBC or Sky Sport, whatever it is, you don't really see her spoken about. But I mean, an incredible player. There's no doubt in that.
Yeah, outstanding as well. You know, first season with the club, and she's really made an impact and just shown how influential she is. You know, she's pulled a lot of strings and she controls the ball really well. And she's an attacking-minded player, but is happy to drop in and out of roles as well, and plays a really important role for the team. She links up well with the players around her, and yeah, she's definitely one of those players that are, again, you know, when you were sat watching at home and you're in the stadium watching a game, you know, and you see that intelligence that she has in her game and what she can bring is absolutely fantastic. She's one of those players that you can just watch all game. You know, she's very intelligent. And you know what? Given as well that she doesn't speak much English, her understanding of the game and the communications, you know, in and around that role that she's got is really impressive as well. So I think she's only going to sort of improve her game, and I think in time she will become potentially one of the best players in the world. I really do. She's got that kind of caliber within her, I think.
Yeah, I don't like bigging up City players too much, but 100%. Yeah, I just love. I think one of the reasons I rate her so high again is because she just doesn't seem to get mentioned. I guess, you know, obviously Bunny Shaw gets the headlines because rightly so in some respects, because she's scoring. You know, same I guess from a United point of view with certain players. Maybe Honor doesn't get mentioned as much, but she is obviously now with a nomination for the Player of the Season. But before that, again, she wasn't really. You know, maybe it's just a goals thing. Who knows? Barry, obviously, Emma talks about the front line of City. One of the questions I want to obviously ask you, obviously there's a bit of chat about rotation and that kind of thing. 10 out of the 11, I think, you know, we've pretty much nailed on. But speaking from a City attacking point of view and United defending, Millie Turner or Ethan Mannion for Sunday, I guess, is the big question. I think if we're going to see anyone swapped in or out, it's going to be one of those two, because we saw Mannion come in, and obviously I know she had a little bit of a knock in the Arsenal game. But who would you be starting in this one? Obviously, Millie Turner's height, obviously against Bunny Shaw, would be a good strength, but Mannion's not afraid of getting stuck in either. So, who would you want to see start? And I guess who are you expecting to see start?
Well, you're right. Mannion's not a pushover at all. We had this conversation before the cup final. I distinctly remember saying I think that Mannion might get the nod. And I was wrong. So that doesn't happen very often on here, does it? He's listened to everything else I've said. Didn't listen to that one, though, did you, Mark? And look what happened. We lost 1-0. Just throwing that out there. You could put either in. You know, we talk about rotation, and, you know, I've already had to sit here and sort of take the deep breaths and everything, because I can see there's people here saying, oh, we should do more rotation, be more like Chelsea. And I still don't agree. We are where we are without that rotation. You know, I think it's a bit of a madness. We're only 2 points off them, but yeah, we've got to change a strategy entirely just to get there. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. But yeah, I think either of those in that position in centre back, we do have a little bit more depth, I think, where we can feel confident. We can feel confident if Turner plays. We can feel confident if Mannion plays. I don't feel like we need to worry about that too much. I feel like he will probably start with Millie Turner. That seems to have been his choice all season. And why not? One of the best defensive records in the league. Better than Chelsea's, I might add on this one. So, therefore, hard to argue that you wouldn't want to put someone like Millie Turner in there. But there's always a shout that you might throw Mannion on. So, yeah, I think he'll start with Millie. That's probably where I'll go with it. You're right. The other positions are pretty much nailed on, and so it should be. Potentially a question mark again, as we always say, on their right wing. What is he going to do there? Will he start with Paris? Will he put Garcia on? Are we going to see Ella Toon thrown out there and Rachel Williams stuck in the 10? Are we going to go to a back 3? Is it a back 7? How's he going to play it? Is Earpsey going up front? I'll tell you what, after Sunday, anything could happen. Bagley could be playing just behind Russo. Absolutely anything could happen. So, yeah, I think that's where I'll go with that. Millie Turner. Was there anything else you wanted me to answer in that little question that you just gave there? I think I've answered everything you were asking.
No, you definitely did. But I agree with you. After Sunday, seeing Rachel Williams in centre defensive midfield at times, I think anything's up for grabs on Sunday. And yeah, obviously there's a lot. I don't want to get into the rotation point, but I think Kaz is right. Next year, particularly if we get into the Champions League groups, I think we will see it. Well, we're going to have to see it a lot more. We're playing 2 games a week, anyway.
I know you don't want to get into it, but I am just going to throw it up there because, I mean, this is literally the whole point of life, isn't it? Who knows? You could be right, I could be right, but we'll never find out. So there's no point arguing over it, is there? There's never going to be any empirical proof to prove it one way or the other. So we'll just agree to disagree on that one. People can tell me all day long, but we'll never be able to prove it, will we? I'm just going to point out we're second without it. So the only way we could get any better would be to be first. And we would have done had we had 2 penalties against Kings Meadow. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, to be fair. Not entirely wrong. Obviously, there was one at the weekend as well. But
you also would be closer if you hadn't drawn 0-0 with an Everton side.
That one is.
I'll put that right there as well.
Or indeed, drawing against City.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, precise a City side that, again, I want to put out here. I came on at the beginning of the season and said right at the very end, City would be fighting to the very end of it, and I was shot down consistently. The thing is with City, and I think this is one of the points that people do forget, even when they've had problems, there is still a phenomenal amount of quality there at the club. And I think maybe at times you haven't necessarily appreciated the fact that they have had sort of some of the most significant turnover in the WSL. I mean, you look at the players that they've lost. We pretty much single-handedly have made Real Madrid relevant for a year. Stanway has been a driving force in actually Bayern Munich winning the title. Kira Walsh is winning absolutely everything with Barcelona, and they're likely to lift the cup. Ellen White obviously now is retired, but when you talk about players, and I think you talk about the impact that Rachel Williams has had at United, I think Ellen White, in her ability to be such a finisher and such a important player in the key moments, it's a similar loss. And I think if United don't have Rachel Williams next year, they're going to have an interesting conundrum of resolving that sort of player, a player that is happy to have limited minutes, a player that is happy to, come off the bench, but still really make an impact. And I think, I think City maybe this year has been a bit of obviously a transitional year, but I think if they do end up 4th and they end up outside the Champions League, it will give them such a hunger. I mean, they've got a squad. Their rotational players can get through a Conti Cup group stage. I've got no doubt in that. They will bring in quality in the summer. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them right up there fighting next year and being a very, very credible threat in next year's title race, because I think they will not have the same disruption this summer. They won't have the same number of players leaving, even if they haven't got Champions League football. And I think that's the big thing this year, is whereas last year it kind of was a case, even with Champions League football, everyone knew all these players were going to go in. This year, it seems to be a case that, maybe 1 or 2 of the squad players are going, but I don't think they're all going to be going.
Agree.
No, it's fair. We're certainly going to get onto I guess the ifs of different scenarios and things like that towards the end. Nancy, while we're talking about kind of key players, and to be fair, Barry, I welcome back to you actually from a United point of view, but I think everyone watching knows I guess, or we've spoke about key players a lot. But Nancy, obviously from us, is obviously on the thumbnail, Frida Martin this season. I think when you're talking about impacts on a squad, she's been that one consistent, I guess, this season. Obviously, injuries hasn't helped. She consistency this season. We're chopping and changing. We know McCabe's been solid as well, but Marnham is a player I wanted to highlight. What do you think her kind of influence has been on this side, from that kind of midfield-ish role, driving the team forward, and she's got one hell of a shot on her as well, scoring some incredible goals this season.
Yeah, massive. And I think last season we saw glimpses of it, but she wasn't kind of at her full potential. And I think this season we're seeing like the player she is. I think, you've basically said it all. I think in midfield she is really influential. Scores just big goals. I think it's exciting that she's so young and we can kind of build a team around her. Hopefully she will stay. But yeah, she's been massive, and I think obviously there's been so many injuries and stuff, but that is one player that I'm very relieved hasn't got injured, because I think she is quite an integral member of the team. I think I'd give a shout out to Palova as well, since we brought her in this season. I think some of the matches that I've watched her play in, she's just been absolutely unbelievable. I think next season again she's going to have that kind of like step up, first full season. So yeah, I think kind of in the latter half, when we're talking about the players that have come through because of the injuries, and she probably wouldn't have been given as much game time if the injuries hadn't happened. So in some ways it's kind of like a bit of a silver lining that these players have had the chance to kind of show what they've got, because she is absolutely incredible, and her and Mornham I think could be really like build a team around those two in midfield, because they're brilliant.
Yeah, Palova is a good shout, as Sarah just mentioned there in the comments as well. I mean, again, another, as you said, maybe not as many minutes potentially. If Mead's fit, Miedemar's in there as well. You'd probably see a bit more rotation in there. But yeah, as you said, players have stepped up, as I said earlier on, off the back of Paul's comment. I don't think many teams potentially, with the injuries to such key players, I think people forget that. It's not like it's your fringe players. It's four of your starting 11 pretty much now, 5 if you...
Can I ask a question actually to Nancy, but also to everyone else? Obviously, Frida Leonhardsen-Morden's been brilliant in that sort of 10 role, in that creative role. Viviana Miedemar wants to play in that role. Now, either do you start both of them in that 10 role, in which case, who do you drop, Kim Little or Leah Walty? Because you're not, you can't fit all them in unless you're going to play some really weird narrow formation, in which case, who do you drop out the front three? Or do you think Miedemar, because of the fact she's been out injured, regardless of the quality of the player she has to sit, bide her time and wait because of the performance of Frida Leonhardsen-Morden?
Yeah, I mean, even before Viv got injured, she was on the bench, I think, because Mornham had taken that number 10 role and excelled in it, and Viv didn't want to play up front. So I think that's even when she was fit. I'm not kind of, I don't think just because of someone's reputation and their wage or like the amount, their market value or whatever should dictate that they get instantly into the starting 11.
Would you take the same approach then with Beth Mead? If you've got other players in the attack that are playing well, because at the moment Ford's playing really well.
Yeah, it's hard. Obviously, with coming back from injury, you ease them in, don't you? So it wouldn't be like immediate starting places. So I guess this is where, fingers crossed, we qualify for the not the World Cup. Just obviously
that would be impressive.
Complete rubbish. That would be insane. The Champions League, that's where kind of like the benefit of being in the Champions League group stage, if you've got kind of a lesser team to play against, you can start players that are coming back from injury in those kind of matches and essentially just kind of see who's playing better. But yeah, no, I would say the same with Mead. And I think, again, like if you look at Beth Mead, I actually remember coming on this podcast like a couple of years ago, and is when we signed Nikita Paris. So when Beth Mead hadn't had the best season at Arsenal, and I said that I'd start Paris over Mead, which the following season Beth Mead had the best season of her life, and it's probably one of the stupidest things I've ever said. But that is kind of one season that Beth Mead had that was absolutely incredible. And while I think she's an amazing player, I think you've got to give fair dues to the players that have come in, stepped up when the injuries have happened, and give them a fair chance to keep their place in the team. it's exciting as an Arsenal fan as well if you've got that competition and that kind of like potential for rotation as well, and just the the subs coming off the bench, impact subs, like complete game changers. I think that's really exciting. And as we've kind of alluded to here as well, if you've got those other competitions, if you want to compete in the FA Cup and stuff as well, then you do need that depth. So there would be times that obviously Viv and Beth could start if they weren't getting in the starting 11 for the WSL. But yeah, it's a really interesting like debate and thing to think about, and it's exciting. I think it's in a really good situation, to have that level of players and that dilemma.
I feel like the best option there would actually be if you play Friedley and Hudson Morley in the 10 and then just give us Vivian Miedema. I'll be quite content with that.
League, though, so it depends. Well, I mean, you guys are definitely getting Champions League, but yeah, we'll see.
When you talk about Mead, I think back, Emma, to the pre-season show that we did, and obviously injury, we couldn't have foreseen that, but you were saying at the time that she would get the Golden Boot this year. Yeah, and it's like how different the season could have been if we saw a Beth Mead off the back of the Euros fully fit for the season, because
again, it's a real shame that for those sort of big players in the Euros, a few of their seasons have worked out the way they have through injury and whatnot. Beth Mead's top class, and it's a shame that obviously devastating injury again. Miedema, the players that have just fallen victim to ACLs and had their seasons written off is just devastating. And again, looking ahead to the World Cup as well, it's such a massive time in the women's game as well, and it's just really unfortunate. But I think there have been some really standout players, and Arsenal in particular have just been really, really unlucky. But I remember even a few seasons under Joe, you went through another injury crisis pretty similar, and you rode that out really well as well. So it is obviously a really difficult position to be in as a fan. And you can just hope now. I hope for Arsenal you can just get through the rest of the next couple of games without any sort of injury, because it just needs to be every game, doesn't it? If it happens, it's just awful.
It's like a group therapy session now on Twitter with all the Arsenal fans. But yeah, like the last time we won the league, our squad again was decimated by injury, and it kind of managed to pull through there as well. So yeah, I'm just looking ahead to next season now. Like hopefully get Champions League, go again next season with some of our players back, and we'll see what happens.
No, we're going to get to Volsey in a second. I don't want to obviously mention her. Sorry, Nancy, to bring up another one of your injuries, but I don't want to mention her as well. Considering we're halfway through the show and we're going to big up each other's players here, the question is coming that I prepped the guys before we went live. I asked this pretty much for every kind of big preview that we do. If people have never watched the show before, so I'm going to ask everybody. Obviously, so Barry and Emma from a United and City point of view, Nancy and Rob from a Chelsea and Arsenal point of view, you've got to swap an opposition player into your starting 11. So obviously from myself and Barry, we've got to pick a Man City player and they have to start. The rule is you can't just pick a player and then stick him on the bench. Whoever you're picking would replace. So if we're picking Bunny Shaw, Russo would drop to the bench or drop to the number 10. And Bunny Shaw would start as striker. So I'll let... Who should I go to first? I don't know who's... Barry doesn't look ready for this.
Do you want me to start? Because I can wax lyrical. That gives you some time.
Yeah, well, I know who yours is, Rob. So if you want to go for who are you putting in from an Arsenal point of view?
So I mean, first I'll go through in terms of take out for a Chelsea point of view. I'll just say whoever will be in the defence midfield position, because at various times this year it's been Ingle. We've played Melanie Leopold's in there. Jessie Fleming played a couple of games. I've seen Maren Bielda in there. So just in that role, I love her. Leah Walty at Arsenal, she is just a class act on and off the pitch. If tackling is an art form, then she's like Salvador Dali of it. The ability just to read the play, to get the interceptions in, I think it's something that's so phenomenally underrated. I've been on multiple Arsenal, podcasts and various fanzines and said I would rather play an Arsenal side that had Mead and Miedema but no Leah Walty than play an Arsenal side that had no Mead and Miedema but had Leah Walty in there. Walty being absent on Sunday, I think it's a massive, massive miss. I just think, she's a phenomenal, phenomenal footballer. I want to also pay tribute to her character. Obviously, on Wednesday evening, she wouldn't necessarily have known how serious the injury was. at the time about the scans. She obviously was in a lot of pain. It was spoke volumes of her character that her first thing she wanted to go out and do was to go and protect the fact that Aggie Beaver-Jones was getting abuse. I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that the biggest concerning thing about that situation was the fact that the referee initially gave a yellow card and then seeing the severity of the injury changed their mind. The severity of an injury should not impact a referee's decision. It should not be some sort of quantifiable factor. A terrible tackle is a terrible tackle either way. I think Walty is a phenomenal player. I was desperately hoping that she would leave Arsenal this summer. Annoyingly, she signed a new contract, mainly due to the fact that I want to be able to wax lyrical on a more regular basis. I get rather ill when I do it about Arsenal players. But no, I think she's just an absolute class act on and off the pitch. It's good to hear that she will likely be at the World Cup. And I think, if you were asking me for an underrated 11 in the WSL, then she would probably be among the first sort of couple of names immediately that I would put in.
How good was that marketing bit of thing around her contract as well, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Arsenal did for Volti. That was fantastic. Whoever came up with that idea, absolute genius, by the way. Which a little bit envious of the Arsenal media team, I've got to be honest, whoever's behind the idea, because they definitely do smash it online. Nancy, I'll throw it back over to you then. Who are you taking from Chelsea, putting into the Arsenal 11? This is a fully fit, I will emphasize, so everyone's fully fit.
I would 100% take Millie Bright, just because it would mean that we could go to a back four. I think while the back three is working surprisingly well, I think we don't really have like the subs to bring on. And I think when we saw in the Champions League fixture against Wolfsburg that mistake, that the Wolfsburg goal in extra time was essentially just an absolute knackered Lotte Wubben-Moy that couldn't come off because there were absolutely no players to put on for her. I think bringing Millie Bright in would just allow us to go to a back four and probably just take her out for Jen Beattie, who I think is great, but Millie Bright's just a lot better, and then we can just use our players more efficiently. But if I couldn't choose Bright, I'd probably choose someone like Sophie Ingle, because I think in midfield we're missing an experienced midfielder now with Kim Little and Leah Volti gone. That would be my other choice, but Millie Bright for me.
Interesting shout. Barry, have you got a City player in mind? There's a couple of shouts already in the chat. Four. You got to narrow it down. You got to try and whittle it down to one as you reel them off.
Yeah. So obviously Bunny Shaw's on the list. I'm not bothered now. I'm going to go down with three. I've already got rid of one. So Shaw, Hemp, and Kelly are the three that I've written down. This is atrocious. I'm not going to take Hemp purely because they've got to start. If it was bringing somebody in just to create squad depth, then I think she'd be with a really good shout, because the opportunity of having Galton or Hemp would be quite cool. But that's not the rules. As we all know, we've got to stick to Connor's rules when we play these games. So that one's got to go, which leaves me with Bunny Shaw and Chloe Kelly. Now, the interesting thing is that we've been talking a lot about that right-hand side, and I thought it was quite interesting because Titus has picked Kelly, she starts, and put Paris back on the bench. Again, something that I find quite hard to take, considering how well Nikita Paris did at the weekend and how well she's done this season. I think she's certainly contributed, and I would argue probably contributed more for Manchester United as a whole season than Chloe Kelly has for Man City this season. So therefore, on that logic, and based on the fact that everybody was telling me after Sunday, we've got to get ourselves somebody who can score a goal, someone who's going to be prolific. For them, I'm going to take Bunny Shaw.
Interesting. Yeah, there was obviously the links to United before she went to City as well. So it could one day. We could.
Worst case scenario, Russo could be shifted out to the right. She has played there before, so and
Shaw down the middle. Not too against that one. Emma, who are you taking? We don't want to see that. Emma, who are you taking from United to start for City?
I think it's again. I can't just pick one player, unfortunately. It's really hard, I think, at the moment. I mean, for me, I think Honor's had a fantastic season. I think we've been fairly inconsistent on our back line. We've had players in and out of positions. And Kasparai's come in first season. She's done a good job. And legitimately, I would probably switch Anna Kasparai round and have Anna come in. But I want to also big up Katie Zellum because I think she's had the best season in a United shirt this season. She's had some really big moments in some really key games, and she's turned it out into be a bit of a dead ball specialist. And I think that's a good player to have in your squad. I think midfield again, we've been fairly inconsistent. I wouldn't switch any of my attack, but maybe having Katie come in for someone like Angledal or Coombsy. But for me, I think more consistency in the back line, and I'll put Honor in.
Some interesting shouts here because I think, I was torn between Kelly, put her on the right because everyone knows her quality. I think she's an unreal player, and Hasegawa, who we spoke about earlier, I'd love her in the United midfield, but then I'm thinking, we don't see that much rotation in midfield anyway. If we had Hasegawa in there, she probably wouldn't play. That's real. So in my head, I would be starting her in our midfield. I think if you put her alongside Zellum or Ladd or whoever with Tooney ahead, I think, again, brilliant. But, we talk a lot about the right-hand side. Kelly is just an unreal footballer, so maybe her on the right. There was a shout for Rasso as well. Chris put Rasso on the right, maybe.
Not had enough minutes. She's such a top-class player. She should be playing every week in, week out.
Is this you? Who would you take out then? Just out of interest, while you said that, so are you saying Rasso should be starting more, or
no? I think it's hard for her to start ahead of Kelly, but I think for her as a player, she should be playing week in, week out. Obviously, I can't see how she's going to be picked ahead of Kelly with the form that she's in at the moment. But I think she's the type of player that deserves to be playing week in, week out. If it's not at City, I think she needs to be somewhere where she is playing week in, week out.
No, it's hard to disagree with that one. So some interesting shouts there. That is for sure. I'm going to go to a returning injury player first. So Rob, back over to yourself, and then Nancy, I'm going to come back to you for a player that we know is going to be out. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Volsey before Emma and Barra come back to you. But Rob, I don't want to spend too long on this because we could talk about it all night. But obviously, Pernilla Harder's return is something that is worth mentioning because, as I tweeted yesterday when the videos went out, probably one of the best players I've ever seen live. I'm not ashamed to say that. I rate her that highly. I think a lot of people do. So what have you made of her return? Obviously, we know this is going to be her last game at Chelsea on Sunday alongside Magda as well. Let's see if you could do it in under 2.5 minutes. If you could talk about Harder's return and how good she's been since coming back. You are muted as well, by the way, and that wasn't me. Who's muted you?
Even less than 2.5 minutes. Harder's just a phenomenal footballer. Everything she does is just absolutely weight to perfection. I know last weekend, as United fans, you probably had the opposite reaction to it. Us seeing Harder coming on was basically, we've won this. You seeing her coming on was, we've lost this. She's just unbelievable. She's such a good player in big games. I think 44 goals and 18 assists in 79 appearances for someone who consistently has not played in her best position or been injured or often come on as a substitute. Yeah, she is a tactical sheet. Honestly, I've never seen. There are very few players in the game I can think of that are faster with the ball than without it. But Harder is one of them. She just starts dribbling, and as soon as she starts dribbling you from 30 yards out, you either got to just pray she's not getting the shot on target, or just have to regroup and go again because you're conceding. And I've seen her do it so consistently. I'm really going to miss watching her in the WSL, not only as a Chelsea fan, but just, also from a neutral perspective, just because it's been amazing to see one of the world's best players playing in the league. And, it's been a real pleasure.
No, definitely. Obviously, the links to Bayern Munich, they're getting one hell of a player to add to their already pretty good forward line as well. So they're certainly one to keep an eye on for next season in the Champions League, potentially, if a couple of their other targets go through as well. I mean, Highland saying either sitting away at Rennes on the final day could be two extremes. Chelsea lifting the title, Reading going down. I mean, literally is the two ends of the spectrum on that one. Nancy, for yourself, what obviously we've mentioned Volti, the kind of the loss to the team that she's going to be obviously an unfortunate injury picked up midweek. What obviously, well, I'll just let you talk to us about the loss you think she's going to be on Sunday. We know what a phenomenal player she is, but for maybe people who don't watch Arsenal week in week out, the impact that she brings to the side.
Yeah, I think I know Rob's already said quite a lot, but just I think her influence in midfield is massive. I know they all call her snake hips just because when she receives the ball and like turns, it's like just ridiculous. Like her fluency with the ball is amazing, and yeah, she's just such a good kind of all round midfielder that she dictates play a lot of the time. Just watching her, yeah, she's such a pleasure to watch, and I think in what is now a relatively young Arsenal 11 as well, starting 11 or just team kind of who's left. She's quite a big influence as well in terms of being one of kind of the older heads in the side. So yeah, just quite a big miss. I kind of, obviously, I know we've talked about like Arsenal's resilience and that, but I think the injury itself seemed to be I think a lot of the players seem to be quite upset and angry about it. So I think there might also be a bit of a psychological impact of the injury as well. They've kind of seen a lot of their teammates injured, but I think the Volti one was a bit more, I guess when you tear your ACL, it's normally non-contact and it's, can look a little less kind of gruesome. And Volti was obviously quite upset. So yeah, I think potentially there might be a bit of a psychological impact of that there. I'm sure they won't let it get to them in terms of, on the play, but I think a lot of the players will be quite upset about it. And yeah, just I'm sure we'll see against Chelsea, like that absence in midfield, there will be a big hole in Arsenal's midfield without her.
Just out of interest, sorry, who do you think will come in, or how do you think you'll approach it? Because I'm just looking at who you've got. I can't see who is going to slot in anywhere to make a kind of midfield or a back 3-4, however you decide to play it.
I think Catherine Kuehl might be the one that comes in. Whether you might have to bring Mornan back or just make sure she's doing more of a defensive midfielder role. I think we might have to do that. And then Catherine Kuehl coming in again, which isn't the most ideal because, she's like 19 or a teenager, basically, with not that much experience. I am also quite intrigued to see how it works out, but it's... I'm kind of in a way relieved that even though these two games are massive, it seems like she's going to be out for 6 weeks. So I'm just really relieved for her that she's not missing the World Cup, but also that it's kind of the end of Arsenal season anyway. So I guess if there's ever a time to have an injury, that's going to be 6 weeks. You'd want it towards the end of the season. But yeah, I'm also intrigued to see the lineup, to be honest.
Yeah, it certainly made me less confident about Arsenal pulling someone off on Sunday as soon as that. I wasn't watching the game. I got a message saying Volti's gone off. I was like, well, that's Chelsea won on Sunday then. So I lost instant hope on that one. Speaking of hope, I no, Tigers, that's not happening. I wouldn't put any money on that. That's she's leaving the WSL, unfortunately, if you like watching her. Emma, throwing it back over to yourself. Obviously, City this season, I just want to ask you, I guess, where you kind of, or how you're assessing City's season up to this point, because there is obviously now a strong chance, if you lose Sunday, it's looking likely that there won't be Champions League next season. Is that I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't make top 3, how will you kind of assess the season, over the summer and going into next season? Do you think there'll be a lot of changes next season? Do you think, or are you still hopeful that you can get into, obviously, with a win on Sunday? There'll obviously be a big boost, but you're relying, I guess, on Arsenal dropping points somewhere, obviously potentially against Chelsea.
Obviously, the logistics of it for all teams at this point, you don't want anybody. Nobody wants to be in a position where you're relying on other teams. If we could have it our way, obviously it'd be in our hands, and then we can assess obviously the results and game by game and whatnot. But at this point, I think if we don't get Champions League, obviously, of course, it's a disappointment. You want to be competing in all competitions at the end of the day. And for me, I will be disappointed with that. But again, given back to the sort of the beginning of the podcast where I spoke about, losing players and going through that transition, which I think Rob mentioned about, again, it being a transitional for us in terms of, players that have left, players that have come in, allowing that time for those players to settle in and bed in that environment, in that culture, and sort of coming to terms with the style of play and how we want, play out the City kind of way and that ethos. I think again, it kind of goes back to the fact that we have established that we have got a core group of players now that we kind of want to build around, and obviously the announcement of Niels Nilsson coming in as director of women's football as well. There's a lot of positivity obviously coming out of the club in terms of the future, in terms of where we want to be, the ambitions of the club and how we want to compete at the highest level and win. Obviously that's just got to come to fruition for me. If we have 1 or 2 seasons where again we're just sort of missing out on Champions League, or we're just missing out on titles, and we're in and out of the mix, it's not good enough. We've had a lot of harsh lessons over the last few seasons, and there's got to be a point where we actually learn from it and do something with that. I think I am worried about the players that we might lose if we obviously don't secure Champions League. I think there might be a couple of players that might make a decision based upon whether or not we achieve that in terms of the club status and what we're going to be playing in next season. So that'll be interesting. But I still believe that there is enough ambition there for the club to bring those sort of players in, those big sort of signings that we need to just kind of fill the gaps, because I don't think we're that far away. I don't think we need to do too much. So it will be an interesting one, but of course, we will be disappointed without Champions League next season, but I think there's enough positives to kind of carry us through that and build on that in terms of, looking ahead and hopefully having a better season, competing at the highest level in terms of top 3 and fighting for that title that we really, really want as well.
Yeah, I think I said on a show on here a few weeks ago, whoever misses out, I think it's going to be unfortunate on them. I think, was it 47 points got into the Champions League last season? I think you were on 47, we were on about 42. This season, it's looking like it's going to be about, it probably is going to be 50 points to get into the top 3. So it has risen by 3 points this season. But yeah, I think whoever misses out, whether that's City or Arsenal, could still be us, but very unlikely that 17 goals is going to be swung. I'll be amazed.
I can't see it happening, to be fair, and it's looking more likely that we're going to fall victim to that, and it's our own making, and we've got to learn from it and not be in that position next season. It's how do we move forward from here, and what do we do, and how do we look at it, and what lessons have we learned, and how can we adapt the squad to be better and perform better next season. We've been in, this isn't the first season where we've had a really crap start. At what point are we going to come back from that and start strong? These are the little things that make an obviously big difference in terms of that season's campaign.
Well, you look at last season as well in particular. That's where United, we really thought last season that we weren't going to make it into that top 3. Obviously, our own demise at the back end of the season with all the draws. But City went on like a 15, whatever a game was, winning run from kind of November, December, all the way to the end of the season, which obviously saw you move into the top 3 at the end. So, yeah, certainly ones to keep an eye on over the summer, should you not. But Barry, from a United point of view, I guess the only worry I've got, because I'm pretty confident again, going into this with how we played against Chelsea and things like that, is the only worry for yourself that potentially if we go into that game knowing that Chelsea have already beaten Arsenal off the back of a cup defeat as well, that the players are a little bit, I guess, I don't know what the word is. Obviously, when you win a big trophy, there's that momentum, that positive momentum. But off the back of a cup final loss, do you think that might? Obviously, Mark Skinner spoke very positively in his press conference that the players are using it as fuel. He's going to say that. He's never going to come out and say that the players are feeling it. But is that maybe the only concern, that maybe last Sunday might have taken a little bit out of the players, that kind of emotional response to losing the cup final in the way that we did?
No, I think what it does is it just adds pressure on. Listen, if Chelsea have gone on to win, then all Mark Skinner's got to tell them is the only way you get to fight for the title in the final day of the season is if you win today. If you don't win today and you draw, then that's it. We've just given Chelsea the victory. So, if anything, Chelsea winning just makes the team talk a little bit easier, really, because they know that failure is not an option. It's just another cup final. So, no, I get what you're saying. I think you can have these games where you do end up feeling a little bit nervous and a little bit worried. We've been saying this all season. Will this game be a bit too much? Will they be able to stay ahead? Will they be able to score? And they've been mentality monsters this season. They really have. With the likes of Rachel Williams coming on and scoring late goals, Millie Turner coming on and scoring late goals. Sorry, Nancy, but Alessia Russo scoring late goals. These people have been doing it. And at what point do we just say that's just Man United? We nearly had a late goal against Chelsea there. But their goalkeeper and a few other players managed to get involved. So we fight till the final whistle for every single game. And I think, in all seriousness, whatever happens this season, we have got to be just incredibly proud of how the team has progressed this season and what we have done. We've spent, since the inception of this channel and the time that I've been involved in it, talking reverently about Chelsea, strutting around, the cock of the walk, enjoying himself, loving life. It's their manor, all that sort of stuff. And that's how it's been. And although that respect is still there, and it should be, because Chelsea have been and are at the moment probably still the best team in the country in general, it's a lot closer than it used to be. A lot closer than it used to be. And you're looking at the likes of Man City now and Arsenal, who made up that traditional top three. It's no longer a traditional top three. We finished fourth in the previous seasons. Every season we've been in the WSL, we finished fourth. And it was never really called a top four, because if you finish fourth, all you really are is the first team to not make Champions League football. So it's not really a prize for coming fourth, but it is a top four. Absolutely is, because these four teams represented here in front of you have been the top four of the WSL for the last 4 years, which is, quite something. So it is a top four. And the thing we need to be proud of is that, I can't see a scenario where we don't finish in the Champions League this season. And with that in mind, that is huge for us. And that was always the objective. Let's be clear, the only person that ever said we were going to win the league this season was me. And so if I'm wrong, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Who am I? I'm nobody. So, that the hope and the optimism is always there. But I don't write us off. I still think there's a chance for Arsenal to go off and do something against Chelsea. Arsenal have been defying expectations since the moment Miedemar and Mead were off the pitch. The minute they were gone, everybody was going, well, that's it then. They're not going to score any goals. But they have hung on like the proverbial floater, just constantly around and around. No matter how hard you flush, they just don't go away. And they've been there hanging on. And as a result, they could be about to make sure that Manchester City don't make it into the Champions League, which is absolutely huge. So you cannot write Arsenal off. You can't write City off at the moment. As you said, they've had lots of good games. But Emma talks a lot about the start, and that their start for the last few seasons hasn't been great. Our start to the last few seasons has been awesome. Every time we've started the season really, really well, and then we've just backed off, just lost it towards the end. That hasn't happened this season. This season, we need to be incredibly proud of what we've achieved. Incredibly proud. And I think when we have these arguments about rotation and these debates about rotation, I think that's the reason why I get upset about it, Connor. As I said, it's not really a fight that can ever be won one way or the other. But if we were Spurs, I'd understand people sitting there going, we need to have a discussion about more rotation, because we'd be like 10th in the league and not doing very well. When you're second in the league, the best you've ever finished, and you are fighting with the big guns, I just kind of feel like we just need to be a little bit more proud and encouraging of what we've got, and not just so demanding all the time. If we want more, want more next season. Can we not just enjoy this season? The fact that we're looking like we're going to go and make it to a Champions League tour. Why would we not just be excited about the fact that this football club, made 5 years ago after the ridiculous disbandment by the Glazers earlier on in their tenure, why can we not just for once, be happy? Who doesn't deliberately sabotage FA Cup finals? Charlie, you're ruining stuff here. I've just gone on a heartfelt plea, and now it's all been ruined by Connor's sniggering like a naughty schoolboy at the back. It's all gone.
No, I do just have to say on this, because again, I was part of this tweet and this Discord earlier. to any Manchester United fans that think Mark Skinner deliberately sabotaged the FA Cup final, please, go outside and touch some grass. That is the only thing I can say to you. Like, go outside, get some fresh air, because there is no way on earth, whatever you think about Mark Skinner, you think about him from a tactical point of view, there is no way on earth he decided to sabotage the club's first FA Cup final just to prove a point to you. I hate to say it to these fans, you are not that important in that regard. You are important as fans, but he's not specifically thinking, you know what, I really want to prove a point to these people. I'm going to throw the FA Cup final. And also, just on the note, actually, I want to say it's good to hear that Mark Skinner's father is recovering after the news. I think, we can all say that there are many things in life that are more important than football. And again, health is definitely one of them. So it was very good to hear that he is on the mend. And again, kudos to him for coming out. I think it also possibly explains some of the emotions after the game that he did have, understandably, because losing a cup final is never fun. I've been in that shoes, but also if you have that extra, aspect on the side that you're thinking about, and that would have constantly been through his mind throughout the entire game, then I think perhaps we need to remember that these people are human beings as well.
No, 100%.
Is that genuinely a thing? Have I missed that? Is there genuinely people out there in the land of the Twitterati saying that Mark Skinner had deliberately sabotaged an FA Cup final?
Yep, and Connor, can you forward the tweet to Barry, please?
Yeah, it's been miscued. I think Highlane's got it right. He didn't sabotage. He definitely made mistakes. We've spoken about that. There was the tactical video. You have to go and watch that, by the way, if you haven't already. There was definitely errors. We spoke about it on Monday. Bringing Toon off, putting Williams in the defense or wherever she played. It was the wrong decision, looking at it in hindsight. So, yeah, definitely made mistakes, but sabotage was whatever. We're going to move on because we'll be on that point all night on that one. I was just reading Charles' comment. I can't remember what I was going to move to now. Oh, that was it, Emma. There was a question for yourself just a second ago. Don't know how much you want to talk about that one. Isn't he out of contract in the summer, or am I making that up?
Yeah, so I think there's some negotiations going on. But again, it goes back down to this Neil Nelson kind of appointment. And I know probably Rob will have a bit of a view on this as well, is that my understanding is that he's going to play a part in this and the future of the club as well. So he has been mentioned quite a lot, and it seems that he is part of the plan. So yeah, for now it's safe.
Interesting. That's what I mean. I think some United fans are clouded that there's just a United Mark Skinner debate. I think looking at some of the City fans Twitter, Emma, you're more clued up to it than I am, surely. But I think there's been a bit of debate this season about Gareth Taylor. Certainly last season, I remember it, the conversations as well. So that debate's been.
Well, I'll be intrigued. I want to throw a question out there, Connor. I'm just going to hijack your show for a moment, if you don't mind. I'd like to know from our three visiting panelists, if your manager had the season that Mark Skinner had, how would you be feeling about them as leading your team? Would you still want them in next year? Would you be happy or not?
I think with the context, I think you need the context. You need to consider that United have only been in the, been a team for like 5 years, only been in WSL for 4 years. I think to, be nearly definitely qualified for Champions League, in with the title, still in the title race, penultimate game, and in an FA Cup final. I think you've got to I guess remember, that this is a madly competitive league. It's really, really tough. And the progress I think that the team has been on under Skinner is absolutely incredible. I think maybe when United are more consolidated within the top three or Champions League, maybe then I think it's maybe more fair for fans to kind of have a debate around it. But I think what United have done as a team, and I know obviously finances play a massive part in this, but it's still pretty incredible. I don't think you can look at the situation that United are in this season and be like, the manager needs to go, especially because it is a project that is, being built and is nearing its end, and to get rid of the manager would probably be quite disastrous at this point in the project. But yeah, I think once you've kind of reached the aims of Champions League, contending for the title a trophy, you can maybe start having a debate about how the manager is going to evolve to someone that is, maybe of a higher level. But I think the job he's done this season is pretty remarkable.
Which is good, but didn't fully answer the question. So if it had been Jonas Eiderval and you'd finished in the FA Cup final against Chelsea and you finished, let's say, just say Chelsea win it, you finished second to Chelsea on the last game of the season, would that be an acceptable year for Arsenal Football Club?
Would we have the injuries that we've had?
It's irrelevant. You can have the injuries, you can have no injuries. Finishing there second.
I think I'd want a trophy, but that's only because it's Arsenal, and Arsenal hadn't won a trophy since for quite a relatively long period. So I am happy that Arsenal won a trophy this season, and if it was Jonas, I would want a trophy from him. But yeah, I think the situations are kind of quite difficult to compare, really.
Yeah, I have to sort of again echo in a similar sort of vein. Like from a Chelsea perspective, I'd want a trophy, but that's because the fact that the club in all levels has been associated with two things over in the WSL has been chaos and trophies are the two things that sum up Chelsea Football Club over the last decade on both the men and the women's side. But I will say that I do think in terms of the Skinner debate, and this is my sort of view on it from an outside point of view, if there was a really obvious candidate to come in and elevate you up to another level, so, for example, if, let's say, Serena Wiegman was on the market and was available, and there was an obvious, candidate, then I would say you can improve on Mark Skinner. Because at this moment in time, I think Mark Skinner does have his tactical flaws, and he does have things that some of them he is managing to resolve, but some of them he isn't. However, I don't think that manager exists. I don't necessarily think Manchester United in their current form have the attraction to pull away someone like, say, Sonia Bonpastor from Lyon, who is that, elevation of that side. And I think also you have to factor in the takeover in this. While the takeover is going on in the background, I think it's important to stick with Mark Skinner and to give him that backing, because from what I will say, my own opinion, the big thing that Chelsea have learned in the last year is that stability is important in a takeover. And on the women's side, they've had stability. They've let Emma Hayes get on with it. They've given her the backing. And what a surprise, we've done quite well. On the men's side, we've had about as much stability as sticking a trifle on a roundabout and spinning it around. I've used that allegory a couple of times now, but that is the equivalent of what we've got. I think I think that if you could definitely upgrade on Mark Skinner, then go ahead and do it. But I don't think you can. And to be honest, I think Skinner's got, considering the fact that I think United last summer, they made some good signings, but there was no one you really looked at and thought, wow, that's a game changer, if I am completely honest. I think he's done a very good job because he's getting more out of players. I think, he's got more out of Zellum this year. He's getting more out of Alessia Russo as a general player. I think he's getting more out of Nikita Paris. Now the biggest step, and this is the one where I think, is the step forward for him, is to really have that squad and to be able to get the most out of the squad. Because that is what you've seen with Emma Hayes. Emma Hayes last year had a core of about 13, 14 players, and they played every single game, and so many of the squad players didn't get a look in. This year, we've made 75 changes. I think, most players in the squad that haven't been injured have made sort of 10 plus appearances in all competitions. And it's very hard to think of a player in the Chelsea side that you can't think at some point, yeah, they were really important to a result, or yeah, they really contributed to X, Y, and Z. Some more than others, admittedly. But I think that's the next step for Manchester United.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, Emma, for your thoughts on it as well. I mean, something that Highlands point out, he's saying controversial. I don't think it is. Many criticisms Skinner gets regarding management tactics can be applied to Serena. We don't see it as often because obviously England don't play as often as your domestic.
You're not wrong. That Serena is Lionesses FC all the time. She only ever picks English players. Outrageous. That's it, I'm done. That's it. That
was a good one, Harry.
That was tremendous.
But Emma, I'm intrigued to read your thoughts on it, because obviously we spoke about a lot on this channel. You've been on this channel a lot as well, talking about it. Just from across the city, what you think on what he's done this season. As I said, my stance has always changed. I think Rob hit the nail on the head for me. I think next season will be the big test. Can he step up again and utilise more of a wider squad, because we're going to need it? with the more games. But how have you or what's your view on it?
I always thought his appointment, when it was announced, I thought it was going to be good for United. And he has been on an upward trajectory. United have been progressive. They've shown that, they're going in the right direction. And I think as a United fan, I think you can only be happy with that. But you can't settle. You've got to think, right, what is the ambition? What do we want to do? And obviously for United, they want the trophies. And rightly so, that's all you want, when you compete in these competitions. And I think for me, you look at Skinner, and I might be wrong because obviously I've not got anything, but I think for him personally, in his, when you look at Skinner as a manager, he's had the best results during his time at United when you look at his record in games won, games lost, and games drawn. So I think as a manager, he's shown that he's probably really achieved his probably personal best and will want to continue that moving forward. The biggest thing for me now for United is what kind of players are going to gravitas in terms of those signings and who you're going to get in, because again it's now about sort of building a team for the future. And I think with that you're going to be looking at your experience and your youth. You've got some players that only need to sort of develop in certain areas to become stronger, but also to take United to the next level. What sort of players are you going to be looking at to do that? And I think United as a whole have just become a more of an attractive club, so it'd be interesting to see what happens in the summer. And I do think, I know a lot of United fans have got a lot to say about him, and you're in the right to pick up and pull him up on some of his decisions. But if I was just looking at the results and the performance this season, I would be happy. I would be happy with what he's done this season.
I think that's probably a fair way to look at it. Like I said, you support a football team, you want results at the end of the day. I think Joseph, he said he has questionable tactics and decision making. Again, if that's your opinion, you're more than welcome to have it. I think a lot of people will agree with you. I do in certain games. Barry were on the show on Monday. We were questioning why he brought Paris off, put Williams in the middle, and so we all have views on him, particularly in certain games throughout the season. So it does happen. Managers make mistakes, players make mistakes. It happens throughout the season. No one's going to be faultless for a whole season. But you look at where we are. We're going in this time last season. We're going into Manchester Derby's going, if we can get a point here, if we can get a point. We were disappointed coming away with a 1-1 draw at the Etihad earlier on in the season. We're now going into this one going, we're confident here. We need to win this. That's the kind of mentality shift that we've had this season. So, and part of that is down to Mark Skinner and the players as well. Letitia has been absolutely fantastic, as Barry said. We need to be more proud of the team this season, whether we finish first, second, or third. Top three was the aim this season. It's very, very likely we're going to finish there. And second is more than capable, which is good to see as well. Right, we'll wrap this one up then with score predictions. Let's go around the house. I'll actually ask each of you for both games. So I'll start with yourself, Rob. So Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester Derby. What are you saying for both of them?
I'll start with the Manchester Derby. I can see this being tight, tense.
Were you the person on the predictions league that put like 3-3 or 4-3?
I put 3-3 on it on the predictions league, but that's mainly more due to the fact that my predictions league was is never very good, and I'm more interested in reclaiming my 29th spot that I've been battling with all year. I've been battling with Barry and various people all year for that coveted spot in 29th.
Whoa. You ain't been battling me for 29th, mate. I'm about 5th.
Oh, well, who am I battling for 29th, Connor?
John Foster's 29th.
I do apologise, Barry. I should never have doubted your footballing insight. I did hear whispers last week that you confessed offline that Chelsea were going to win the league now, but from a secret source. But I can't confirm or deny.
Don't sound like me.
I thought at the time. Finally, I can agree with one of Barry's opinions. I think, to be honest, I could see it being a 3-3 draw because it's the sort of weird thing that does happen in the WSL. But I think more likely it's going to be tight. It'll be tense. 1-0 either way. Wouldn't like to call it. Kind of fancy United to win it because of the fact it's home, but wouldn't be shocked if City did a number on you. The Chelsea-Arsenal game, I can honestly just see that being a 2-2. I can see neither side defending very well because we don't tend to defend very well against each other. Inevitably, because after I've bigged her up for long-range shooting, Frida Leadenhart and Marnham will score a banger against us. And I suspect Little Harder will sign off her farewell tour with a goal. Again, knowing her, she'll probably wander through whatever remains of the Arsenal line and curl it into the bottom corner. But yeah, no, I could definitely see it. I could see it being a 2-2 draw. I think Chelsea will be happy with that. To be honest, that wouldn't shock me if it was all games were draws.
I hope to see some goals, though. We've bigged this weekend up so much. Can you imagine if both games are 0-0 on Sunday?
Oh, it'd be phenomenal. It would be football heritage.
That would be absolutely shocking. Nancy, for yourself, what are you saying for both games?
Yeah, I mean, I had kind of draws in my head as well. It's like the classic Super Sunday, get everyone hyped and have two very boring games. Now, I think for United City, I might say, I think it will be tight. I might say 1-0 United. I'm going to give United the edge because of the home crowd. But yeah, I think it'd be super close. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw as well. And then, yeah, Chelsea-Arsenal, I think 1-0. I think that might be me trying to be a bit optimistic because, yeah, as much as United fans will hope, I just can't really see us beating Chelsea at this kind of stage of the season when they're in full, like, let's win the league drive. So I'll go with 1-0. Like, I agree with Rob. I think, again, quite tight, cagey. I think that both teams will be happy with a draw means that, it might not be, Arsenal will probably hopefully get a goal and kind of sit back and just defend that. So, yeah, 1-0 in the Manchester derby and 1-0 in Arsenal-Chelsea.
As I say, I hope there's no some gamesmanship going on like we saw in the World Cup in the men's about whenever it was 24, I think it was, when Spain-Portugal, I think it was, that were just playing for the draw, just passing it between the teams, and because they know that a point's good for both of them. I hope we don't see any of that on Sunday. But Emma, what do you reckon? Arsenal, Chelsea, and United City.
So pretty much the same, really. Like you say, you big them all up and you're going to get two more draws, really. But I hope that isn't obviously the case. I think it's going to be two really good games, to be fair. Probably setting up to be the two of the best games of the season, I think, potentially. I do think that Chelsea will have the edge over Arsenal, though. I think they'll probably win it 2-0, to be fair. With the derby, I keep playing out so many different scenarios in my head. Worst case scenario, I kind of feel that we're not going to settle into the game. I think we're going to have a really edgy start. United will start strongly and have control of the game and essentially get that early goal. And it'll just set us off on the back foot and we'll be just fighting our way through it, which is probably, for you guys, the best thing that could possibly happen. The other one is what I think realistically might happen is that it's going to be a really cagey 0-0. And I think there's going to be some quality football on display and it's going to be a moment of madness. It's going to get the goal, but I'm hoping it's going to be Bunny and we're going to win 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I can see all scenarios there. I'm sorry, Charlie. I'm going to be standing nowhere near you. I'm going to stand on the railing behind, I think. Maybe Jess will stand next to you or somebody else. I'm sure Shane and Mark and all those guys will be around. Barry, what are you going for? I'm presuming you're going to say an Arsenal win and United win. I'm just more intrigued to see the scores.
No better than to presume. I think before we even kick off with that, we just have to go, what a weekend. What a moment for women's football this is. The fact that we are bigging up a weekend such as this now, which has got ramifications at the top end of the table in the manner that it does. It's been such a long time, I think, really, since you've had this level of competition going all the way to the end of the WSL in the manner that it is. So for me, I think whatever happens at the weekend, just taking our hats off, I think we've all got to literally take our hats off and doff our caps to the people that have taken part from all four clubs, because it's been a hell of a season, and what a culmination it's going to be. So with that in mind, here are the points of the Stevenage jury. 12 points shall be awarded to... I'm going to tell you what I want to manifest. I've got a feeling that we're going to go out there against Man City and try and start in the same way that we did against Chelsea. And I think if we do that and we get a goal or two, Rob might be feeling a little bit more uncomfortable, especially if we know what the score was, which we will know in the previous game. I do think it's going to be at least a draw between Arsenal and Chelsea. My head tells me it's probably going to be 1-1. I do think that. For various reasons. Arsenal know, as Rob said rightly, a point would be more than ideal for them, virtually guarantees them Champions League football. Good news for them. As far as Chelsea are concerned, they'll be sitting there resting on their laurels thinking a +4 goal difference is going to be enough, and that whatever we can do to Liverpool, they can do better against Reading. So I'm hoping they're going to fall into that little trap, because if they do, I can see us really going out there and trying to cause City some problems. And I think we've got the team to do it, Connor. I really do. We've been the highest scoring team for a long time. And what we saw was Chelsea performing just abnormally well again in these last few games to wipe out a goal difference that I thought was feeling pretty safe. So one or two things is going to happen, Connor. We're either going to go out there, smash City, and really set up the most exciting final day that's ever going to happen, or we're going to go out there and beat City and set up a potentially exciting final day, providing Reading stick all of their 11 players on the goal line, park the bus, maybe sellotape a few of them to it, so it's literally impossible to score past them, and a nice cheeky little draw whilst we go off and beat Liverpool. So I did write down 10-6. We're going to beat City 10-6 with a Bunny Shaw double hat trick. But that was really just to see how Rob reacted more than anything else. You know what I've put? I've put 3-1 for United in the Predictions League, and I feel it's going to be a draw, Chelsea-Arsenal.
Yeah, I don't know which way I'm swinging. I think 3-1 to United in the derby, but I think Chelsea just looked, the final aside, where we put up a pretty good performance against them. I think with Harder being back, it's that there's just so many like fairy tale things for Chelsea, isn't it? But it doesn't always have a happy ending. And maybe Arsenal can spoil the party, but I just think there's just too many things, with Magda and Harder, with leaving as well. Being at Kings Meadow, being at home, they know if they win, they've pretty much won the title. There's just too many things for me that if this was away, if this was at Arsenal's place, I'd be a bit more confident. But the fact it's at Chelsea, I just can't. I can't see anything but a Chelsea win, unfortunately, and obviously that would be because Reading is such a poor side. I can't see them doing anything on the last game of the season. I know that Sport is talking about Leicester Reading. I don't know when that fixture is because that's already happened. If you mean Spurs Reading, that's tomorrow. Which if Reading get a win there, Spurs are in some trouble, and maybe Spurs could be the one to go down. Who knows? But that's certainly a game to keep an eye on tomorrow as well. What was it? I'm just going to ignore that. Anyway, right. We'll wrap it up there because we've been going for an hour and 20 odd minutes. I'll do what I usually do. I'll go around the house for the three of you, get you to shout out whatever you want to shout out, anything you're working on, anything that you want to shout out. Rob, I'll come to yourself first. Obviously, people know your Twitter at, but Asa as well. Obviously, some transfer news coming out, and as we get into the summer, there'll be some stuff there.
Yeah, Asa F-Ball a follow on Twitter. Also, give my sort of personal a follow. And yeah, again, I also just want to echo what Barry said earlier about the fact it is great to actually have a proper, I think, title race, but also we haven't really touched on the relegation battle, but a proper relegation battle, because I think with the big TV deal and the growing interest in the WSL, you want it to be exciting in these final weeks. And I'd argue it's more exciting than the Prem, because we all know that in the Prem, City are steamrolling it, and several sides are pretty boring sides are going down. Hopefully Leeds United. I think we can all everyone on the panel here can agree we'd like to see Leeds go down. But yeah, it's pretty boring otherwise. So I think it's just really good to see, to see it.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy, you probably don't want to talk about the men's Premier League, do you? With Arsenal falling off a cliff at the back end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice that it didn't go all the way because it probably would have inevitably been disappointment anyway. So I think that Southampton match, I made my peace then, so I'm fine now. But yeah, no, yeah. If anyone wants to give me a follow, that's my handle right here. And then yeah, I write for Give Me Sport. Do their women's sport content, so give them a follow as well for my articles and stuff.
Yeah, make sure you go and check that one as well. And Emma, for yourself, obviously you can see your Twitter app. Is there anything else you want to shout out while you're on here as well?
Yeah, that's my personal one. I do a podcast for Man City Winning. Probably nobody watching this channel is interested in that, but MCW Fancast, if you want to check it out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a few people that would listen to it. I do like to listen to some opposition shows, podcasts as well, because it gives you that opposition viewpoint. So when we do these types of shows, it can have a bit more of a balanced viewpoint on it as well. So make sure you go and check out all those guys as well. There is still time if you're in the Predictions League. Obviously, the game tomorrow. If you've only entered your 2 for this week, which was Wednesday, obviously there's still the 6 games at the weekend. So make sure you do that before tomorrow. When are we? I think Monday we'll be back. I don't know why that threw me off. It's Monday 7:00. You know what we do. Match reaction on then. Obviously, make sure you're checking out the last 2 shows. The tactical one on yesterday and the what did you do on Wednesday? But I can't even remember what the show was now.
You don't remember what I did on Wednesday?
I can't. It's completely blanked my mind. Go and watch it anyway.
You're absolutely outrageous, you. Do you know that? I mean, honestly, all these people around it, I'll go on, throw your stuff out. What did you do on Wednesday, Barry? Right, you're my boss.
There's too many things going on in my head at the moment to remember everything. But yeah,
absolutely outrageous.
Make sure you
Obviously,
go.
We were still talking about the Chelsea game, weren't we?
That was it. I remember the show now. I do. There's been a show since then. Forget these things.
Unbelievable.
Anyway.
Don't watch the tactical one. You haven't shouted that one out. It was a nice little tactical one from yesterday. And of course, you can go onto the Men's All for United channel if you'd like to tomorrow, where Dan will be doing an entire show all based around Alex Ferguson, 10 years on. Are Manchester United getting any closer to ever having a manager that's going to win something? Or you could join us on Monday, where we will be reviewing this Super Sunday weekend that we've managed to speak about at length for an entire 90 minutes right now. Is it going to be brilliant, or are we all going to be crying into our coffee? Who knows? Tune in on Monday to find out. That's how you do it, Connor.
Nice one. Make sure you like the video, subscribe it. We'll see you next one.